founder of the Six-Figure Practice Program, which is a private practice accelerator. And today I want to talk about something that comes up very often, on the one hand, for counselors and coaches, and on the other, I think it's not being talked enough about, which is the imposter syndrome. It's this nagging voice that you sometimes hear that says that you're just not good enough at being a counselor, at being a coach. Who are you even to help others, right? It's that voice. And I want to start with a story. About 3 years ago, I watched I'm Not Your Girl, which is documentary on Netflix that shows a few excerpts, a few parts of Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins and how he works. And it sparked my interest specifically because there was a lot of overlap with the work that therapists and coaches do. And on the other hand, it was so radically different. So I decided I want to go and experience it myself. And the first event I went to was UPW, Unleash the Power Within. There were 8,000 people, and yeah, it's the one where we walked on hardcore, which was a pretty remarkable experience on the first night, right? So very different than your regular therapy session. And on the first day or the second one, he talked about Tony Robbins about different fears that we as humans have, and he said that the two biggest fears that humans have are: one, I'm not enough; two, I won't be loved. And then he asked a really good question. He said, who can relate? And that was the most powerful experience for me when I saw 8,000 hands go up in the air, including mine. And I think just the realization that we're in this together, it's kind of scary to just to be alive, honestly, on some existential level. And especially as a counselor and a coach, where you probably feel some responsibility for the lives of your clients to some extent, of course, right? It can be pretty scary when you hear this voice of maybe you're just not enough. You're just not good enough as a counselor or a coach. And I totally get it. Had it many times. Honestly, I still have it to some extent on Sundays, specifically. Before the work week begins, there's this thought of, well, tomorrow I'm going to work with clients, and who am I to help others navigate their lives, right? It's that voice. And it passes pretty quickly with the first session usually, just because there is the actual session that happens that is very different than thinking about it. And it's especially a big part of the coaches and counselors' development, especially during the first few hundred hours, right? So it's unavoidable, and in a way, it's paying your dues as a counselor and a coach. Two of my biggest ones, well, I just want to share with you those before we talk about how to actually use the imposter syndrome to your advantage. Is well, the first one, when I came to the US 6 years ago. This is actually my third country that I live in. I was born in Russia, then my family immigrated to Israel, and now I'm here in Colorado, USA. I had this big fear of English is my third language. I'm going to be a foreign in a new country, right? So there's a big cultural difference. Uh, no one will ever take me seriously, none of my clients. And that was a huge, huge fear. And even before that, I was kind of scared that I won't get accepted to any practicum or internship, specifically because of my accent. So if I'm being very frank, right, it's a little bit nerve-wracking every time that I go live, um, knowing that some of my words won't be understood by you, right? And I'm getting better, and I know it's a very, very quiet voice now in my head, but it's still there. And I noticed how that imposter syndrome started appearing more and more and more as closer as I would get to applying for a practicum or applying to the internship or doing my first counseling sessions with clients or coaching sessions. And one of my coaches, Rich Litvin, he said, I hope you always have the imposter syndrome because that means that you're playing a bigger game at the next level, basically stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's why you feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's something you've never done before, and something, frankly, that you need to pay your dues to become better at. And I think that's very important because it's a radical different approach to looking at the imposter syndrome and at all those fears. Um, because when I don't need to fight the imposter syndrome, but I actually learn to accept it as this North Star, this symbol of me moving towards something that uh, would definitely entail personal growth and professional growth, then I can just use it as, oh, as a little medal, right? Oh, okay, I'm doing this thing. It's difficult. It's going to require some time and effort and repetition and getting better at and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so there is a price to pay, but there's also a prize, right, with a Z. Um, the second um, time where I especially felt the imposter syndrome was so I'm a business coach and I work mostly with counselors and coaches to help them grow their practice. And you can go to the link below, the sixfigurepractice.com to there is infinite amount of free resources there. And I also work with other businesses, specifically startups, many of them in the healthcare industry, helping them to grow the products, to help to make the world a better place, as cliche as it sounds. And I worked with small businesses for years, but this one was a tricky one because there was this bubble that I wasn't a part of, the bubble of business coaches that work with startups and bigger businesses. So there's bigger funding involved, bigger organizations. And it was scary for me, right? So that imposter syndrome kicked in uh, really quick. So I had to create that first experience of working with a bigger organization, with a bigger business, to actually create the lived experience for myself to see that I'm being helpful. Otherwise, just from thinking about doing it, I would just be overthinking it, and the imposter syndrome would just grow and grow and grow. But I did my best to use that imposter syndrome as a guideline towards as a GPS towards where I want to go next. So all I wanted to say in this um, podcast episode and Facebook Live, Instagram Live, wherever you're watching or listening to it, is that A, it's normal. B, it usually means that you're doing something that requires self growth and professional growth, and it is a part of the package. So I hope it's been helpful, and I'll see you on the next live.